But go ahead.
Um, so raise your hand if you use any sort of pranayama practice besides like the subtle ones that are more common. Jeremiah, you use pranayama. Arya uses pranayama. Roseanne. Wow, a lot of you.
Yeah.
Anybody who raised
Oh,
your hand?
same
Wow.
here.
Oh, you're like, oh, I do breathe. No, just kidding. Anybody who raised your hand, would you like to share when you choose to
Where they
use
get
pranayama? What pranayama exercises you use?
oh,
It's totally optional. Um,
where they get
oh,
chat box there.
Yogini. Hey, Yogini. Yogini uses pranayama, she says in the chat box. Feel free to type in the chat box if you're feeling shy and you don't want to talk out loud to the group. You
Which
can,
ones they're using?
yeah, and when?
Oh, and when? Usha.
Usha, yeah.
I don't do it often, but if I'm feeling really ungrounded, I like to use the crocodile breath a lot. That helps me.
Is that on the belly?
Yeah, with your head in your hands. That's, like, and maybe because teaching kids, that's a really great one.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I love that one too.
I think Yogini has a tutorial on that on Shoshoni's website. So I remember seeing her do that. So that's cool. In case you all are wondering how to do it. Jagan Mati?
Yeah, I do alternate nostril. Right at the beginning of my sit, like when I sit down to meditate, I just feel like it like helps me get started. Like I like to just do it right before I start my mantra practice and my meditation.
So it sounds like at almost every time, like it's really a part
I
of your
would
practice.
I would say pretty much almost every time. Yeah.
Wow,
Oh.
that's
It's
great.
just like it helps me like settle in better. Like instead of just like walking in and going, like it's like I sit down and play the singing bowl and do some alternate nostril. Like, and I feel like it just like settles me in better to the space.
That reminds me of their sutra last time, a couple weeks ago, where it was talking about merging the grosser, the more physical circles, it called them kalas, I think, into the finer and finer circles. And it's like how that pranayama practices almost like help us merge the physical into the pranic, the subtle, into our energetic. It's like it's a good merger.
And then Yogini, I don't know if people have the chat box open, but she says she uses all kinds and she named crocodile, rachaka, candle breath to calm her nervous system. Um, yeah, the ones that you name Yogini, those are also like soothing and grounding. But yeah, Pujari.
I use the alternate nostril breath a lot. And I teach it a lot in my yoga classes too, because my experience of it, and then I get feedback from the students too, that it's kind of a rabbit out of the hat trick where you just do this breath and you don't have to feel bhakti. You don't, it's just the mechanics, the science of it calms you down, gives you a sense of well-being, and it's flawless. Like it always works for me. And my students come back with stories like, my kid just gnawed on my antique chair, my baby gnawed on my antique chair, so I went under a tree and didn't naughty shodhana for 15 minutes, and I realized it didn't matter, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I put the other. Honestly, I probably should have Govinda read this one and then ask him that question. He sort of did a great job, Govinda, because I sort of set you up with minimal information. Because this one really, from Lakshman Ju, does talk about more
And they can't
specifically.
see it.
Oh, sorry, that's my bad. There we go. The one from Lakshman Ju really starts to talk about. He says, merging the movements of the breath in the central vein, and it talks about maintaining awareness and carrying those movements, both inhale and exhale, to the central vein. So that's just a little bit more elaboration on that same quote, which Lakshmanju is so good at. And as we've been doing, do you feel like we're good, or do you want anything else on pranayama? No rush.
It did name another pranayama.
Where?
I think in the Jaydev was saying, I thought I saw Buraka and Rechaka.
Oh, yes. Okay, so Baraka and Rechaka, you probably know this, you may or may not, literally mean inhale and exhale in terms of like Sanskrit and sort of how they're used. And so he's talking about, focusing on the exhale and the inhale and the space between the breath. But the actual Baraka and Rechaka, as we teach it, is a subtle practice where you really try to just gently, you can do it, we can do it for 30 seconds if you want, just gently lengthen the inhale and exhale, like just a little slower, just a little longer than normal. That's all the effort you're going to use. And that gentle lengthening of the breath allows you to start to experience the qualities of the breath without being misled by the qualities of your own effort. And so to begin, you start by trying to notice the physical qualities of, in this accelerated version, the inhale and the exhale. How do you physically notice that breath? Where in the body? You're using a little bit of effort, right, to exaggerate it just a little so that you can notice it. You might feel the expansion of the ribs and the chest with your inhale. You might feel the coolness of the breath in your nose and sinuses. With the exhale, you might notice the gentle compressing of the ribs. And you might also notice that you don't feel the exhale in the nose because it's the same temperature as your body. And so from that level of awareness, we keep that same little bit of effort going. And we try to actually feel the experience. That's the subtlety of it. The experience of inhaling and exhaling, Buraka and Rechaka. So what does it actually feel like to inhale? We take it for granted. How would you describe this experience? It might feel expansive, nourishing. How would you describe the experience of exhaling? It's quite different. A little bit more grounding, centering, releasing. Minimal effort. So that's how we talk about Puraka and Rechaka. It doesn't really come up in the text in that way here, but it's a valuable pranayama.
Anybody notice a difference in your state of being after like just a few moments of pranayama? See some nods. If you're not in gallery view, I see
Keyword.
some smiles and nods.
Just curious, can you throw a keyword out? If you can put it, if there's a tactile kind of sensation that you feel.
And you can just unmute and
Oh,
share.
and we know there's actually a fun way to unmute in case you're wondering.
Oh.
You can actually just hold your space bar and it unmutes you while you're holding it. So you don't have to do all that clicking.
That's
and then it remutes you when you let go.
Zoom.
Yeah. Hey, Anju.
Hi. I find it like levitating, like I feel lighter.
Yeah.
I definitely feel centered by it.
Extra points for having a movement with your word.
Calmer.
I'm gonna add my own word. I'm gonna put like reset. I always feel like, oh, there I am. Okay, reset.
I feel clear, like my mind is clear.
Inside.
Sorry?
Inside.
Inside? Did I get that? So, in the context of this sutra, we're sort of encountering benefits to a practice. And I think, again, within the context of the sutra, where it's saying, like, here's a lot of practices, literally names many, that can give you these specific results, like levitating, for example, or centering, or calmer. I really think I'm constantly trying to do this in the work with philosophy is like, how can we really relate to this? You know, and I think one way to interpret this idea that this sutra is presenting us with is don't do yoga just to have that one experience. Let those experiences come to you. We need them. They're valuable. But you don't want to trap yourself by saying, like, I do yoga to feel reset. I do yoga to feel this one thing. Because I think as we've learned, I feel like over the years listening to Babaji and Rudy recently, I feel like within the last few months, Baba has said multiple times, you don't want to define the goals of your practice too strictly because they limit your capacity. And so we get these benefits along the way, but we don't want to hold on to them as our goal. Now, initially, these benefits sound pretty sattvic and chill, but, you know, there's some stuff in the sutra where it's, you know, and they name it in previous sutras in the second upaya, where it's like people get attached to flying through the air, and suddenly that's all their practice is about flying, you know, and they miss out on their enlightenment because of it. You know, that happened to me for a few years. I remember Baba was pretty upset, you know, and I was like, oh, airfare is so expensive. And
It's a joke, just in
Yeah.
case you don't get a sense of humor.
I was like, you know, I saw a little opening because I've been working with the sutra being like, gosh, what do they mean? Like, you know, how can I really relate? I'm not flying through the air, you know, so what is this? How does it relate to me? All right, Meru, tag team. Meru's in. All right. I'm gonna get rid of this guy. Any final thoughts or questions, comments before we move on to another chunk? Right. I think if how many of you? Well, I don't even want to ask that. If you go on to read this sutra on your own, I will say that at the rest of that paragraph describes what I've interpreted, and I don't know this for sure. I'm interpreting these sutras like you are. They're 1,000 years old. You know, they're not necessarily translated by a student of Babaji or Rudy that we know, so sometimes the translation is a little different. I believe that it goes on to describe like what we might call like the breath of fire, or what is that? Just like a when people
like what is that called?
Yeah.
Kapalabhati?
Yeah, like Kapalabhati, like things where it's like retaining your physical body. It says like to pulse your navel in and out without breathing. Um, we've all heard Swami Rujananda has specifically said this is not beneficial within the context of our practice. Babaji has said not beneficial within the scope of our practice. It's not a good or bad practice, but we always have to be mindful, especially when we're reading broad texts that apply to maybe a different time, different set of teachings. That just because we encounter it in the Shiva Sutras doesn't mean that that spice is going to blend well with all the other spices that we're using. It could very well upset your stomach, which is exactly what we've been told. And so that's why I chose to skip it. You know, you're welcome to read it on your own and everything. But for the record, you know, that's how I think I interpreted it. And anyway, so we're just going to like move on. They're called like the internal pranayamas. All right. Concentration. Okay, so now we're up to the green section, which gets pretty specific. So why don't we have somebody? Hey Gita, haven't heard from you in a while. Do you want to read the green section for me?
The conquest of elements like earth, etc., means control over them by the means of dharana. As has been said in the same book, concentration on the air at the place of the toe of the left foot, on fire in the middle of the navel, on earth in the throat, on water in the uvula, on akasas or ether at the top of the head brings about all supernormal powers.
There you go. So there's the powers it keeps referring to. This exact same section is translated by Lakshmanju a little differently, a little, you might say more thoroughly, I don't know. So we have that one to work with, and then we'll just read this one other and then discuss. It's a little quiet there, Tula, but if you want to give it a shout out, it'd be fun to hear from you, but it's this green section. Apologize, it's sort of long. Oh boy, that's quiet.
Whenever you want to control the wind in your body, you must, sorry, it's a little blurry. Does it say must?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, that's a limitation here. Hold on, let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger.
Oh.
No, but I can't make it any bigger, so I apologize. Might be a limitation for tech tonight. So there it is. Can you read that?
Yeah, it's there. Okay. Whenever you want to control the wind in your body, you must, through contemplation, put your awareness on the big toe of your left foot. When there is insufficient fire in your body, less warmth in your body, you should meditate by putting your awareness in the center of the navel. When there is a lessening of the flesh in your body, you have to contemplate on earth while putting awareness in the pit of your throat to increase that flesh. When there is a lack of water or you are flooded, then you must contemplate on water while putting your attention on the inner tongue.
Yeah, it's right.
Just near the
Alu.
oh, okay. To attain all powers that you desire, you must contemplate on the element ether while putting your attention on your head.
All right, thank you. We don't encounter paragraphs like this a lot in the Shiva Sutras. You know, usually it's pretty practical stuff. I left it in here because it's unique. It's really what this one sutra is about. So here we are. You guys want to try those? A little bit fun. They're not super intense, so I don't feel like they've been, you know, X'd out by anybody. So, okay. I don't usually do this kind of thing. All right. To control the wind in your body, you gotta do them if you want to do them. Put your awareness on the big toe of your left foot.
What do you think controlling the wind means?
1 second. It does feel sort of grounding. Anybody else feel like bringing your attention to your feet? We talked about that in previous classes. I think Pujari mentioned it about migraine relief. Yeah. I will say it's actually pretty sweet. Meru, your hand sort of shot up. Did you have a positive experience? I know we only did it for 10 seconds. Just sort of chill. Okay. All right. Insufficient fire in your body, meaning you're cold. Put your awareness in the center of your navel. Any comments or reactions to that one? I will mention that when I lived at Shoshone and was building the El Dorado, you know, Lotus Dome, with Ram at the time, and I was cold all the time. I grew up in Georgia, and I was just freezing all the time in Colorado. And I remember he grew up in Colorado, so he had some advice, you know, and he said that you got to relax if you want to keep warm. Like, you can't like tighten everything up, because it, like, he just said, it keeps you cold, and if you can relax, and the circulation can like help you out. And bringing my attention to the middle of the navel definitely has that effect, and we actually will see this same cue later in the sutra, talking about it being a very grounding and centering practice, just relating to warmth. Just for fun, we don't want to spend too much time here, but I don't know what lessening of the flesh in your body means. Maybe it just means, you know, you're sort of like, you know, losing weight. You don't know. I don't know. Putting your awareness in the pit of your throat. I don't think we're going to have a direct experience of this, of course, but even just noticing these centers is unique. I do feel there's a relationship there to hunger and cultivating an appetite. Doesn't feel far off. This is going to be a tough one. Lack of water or flooded. That's two opposites there. It has to do with water. You must contemplate on water while putting your attention on the inner tongue.
And in the other translation, it said uvula, which is like the hangy down thing, I think, really? In the back of your throat.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you. And then finally, we can bring our attention on the crown of the head, the top of the head, yes. And we are a lot more familiar with that. It seems pretty common for a lot of these practices to end with, if you can only do one, here's the one. That's that. Good.
Yeah. I feel like my experience exploring each of those things, I had this sense of like, oh, this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Right? It felt kind of good. And in that same moment of like, I like this and I'm enjoying it, I could also like feel how limited it was. Like all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm gonna really, like conquer all these elements by doing these meditations. That it would be like a limited goal would be achieved. So I feel like that's what you were saying was the sutra itself, was like, oh, here's some nice practices that have powerful effects, but they're very limited if you like put all your energy into investing them.
Thanks. Can we see a hand? I don't know if I saw a hand. We good? Okay. All right, cool. Let's, oh, go ahead.
To me, when I first read this, I, for some reason, was thinking of, when your dosha's out of balance, like those were the ways of helping with, like, if you're in the wind or, like those, that's what came to my mind first. And then I also felt this was all just preparatory stuff, nothing to just prepare you for your practice.
Mm. That's really helpful. Bringing up the doshas really helps bring it into a context, like a system organization. That's really helpful.
It's sort of like how Jaganmati shared, like she uses Nadi Shodhana before she practices. So it's almost like finding balance so that we can have a more fruitful practice, but not stopping with that exercise. That's really helpful, Usha.
Together we are very smart. Alone, I feel like I don't come up with. That's great.
Oh, Anju, I see a hand.
Guys, I was just gonna say with this too, it kind of feels like, when you're starting out your yoga practice and you're just sort of encountering things, it can be overwhelming and you're not really sure where to start. So you sort of have these sort of basic, almost more physical activities to give you that like insider experience of the infinite, and to kind of give you a baseline for where to start from so that you can continue to kind of grow and evolve. And if you get stuck in your baseline and that's all you ever get to, like, it's not unbeneficial, but it's not the goal. And so it's important to get brought back in and really hold on to that goal of continuing to grow and evolve. And I really feel like in reading especially these like early sutras and in this section, like I just feel like so much depth of gratitude to have Babaji, have a teacher who helps us discern all this, because it would be so intense to try to do this all by yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to imagine like not having a guide. I remember saying that to Babaji. I'm like, I don't understand how all these people online are promising this stuff and they don't even have teachers and they don't have a lineage. And I was like, how do they do it? And he's like, can't do it. He's like, you can't do it. Like, you can't do it without a teacher. But nobody's wrong or anything. But I just don't understand, how anybody could walk into the woods of samsara and be like, wow, I think I'd really like to have a guide. So conquering the elements was like the second checklist point on the sutras, and that was sort of described here. That's what that was supposed to, indicate. And from there we moved to like transcending the elements. Let me just pull up. Oh, is it getting to be time? It's time. Oh man, we gotta meditate. Remember, that was our goal. It's 10 till. I mean, how could we? I mean, Anju's comment was perfect to close it out. So
We're gonna transcend all of this now.
we're really making. I really want to make the effort because to make sure we meditate in class. Not that we haven't been, but it's just a great opportunity that gets overlooked so easily. But this next part is really a meditation, so let me just use it real quick.
These practices are alluring, right?
I just want to refer to this because I think we can use this in meditation real quick, and it's really simple. He talks about the transition of prana from the heart to the navel and checking it there. And this helps you with withdrawing the mind from sense objects and transitioning our awareness consciously from it's literally like going from the head to the heart and then the heart to the navel. I mean, we do that all the time in our practice. That really fits in well. It says the meaning of the verse is that there should be a transition of prana from the heart to the navel and withdrawal of the mind from objects and its transition also to the navel. And so keeping in mind our last sutra as well, that circles within circles, bringing the attention from the head to the heart is a big circle, going from a very physical awareness to a more subtle awareness. And so swallow and slow the breath down a little bit. And see if you can feel that drawing, as it says in the text, the drawing of awareness. From the head down the throat with the breath to the heart. I've noticed that if you can slow your exhale down a little bit here, it helps you retain your awareness at the heart. And then from here, start to feel the bottom half of your breath, that bottom half of the diaphragmatic aspect of the breath, where the navel is allowed to gently extend down and slightly out. And then each exhale draws that low aspect of the navel towards the middle of the body. try to feel this next dissolving of the circle, this next transition from the heart down to the navel. You can feel it on both aspects of the breath, as the inhale can draw you down, that diaphragmatic breath, and now the exhale slowly can keep your awareness within.